Welcome to Life Interrupted, sponsored by Honolulu Magazine in partnership with Nami Hawaii. Our first installment is called Moments, and I want to invite everyone into the room and joining us. We appreciate everyone coming on. And I wanted to let everyone know that it is the Zoom world, so we are all sort of learning about this together. So I look forward to a smooth ride, and I know I'm accompanied by great experts and looking forward to hearing from everyone in our talk story session. But I also wanted to say that, bear with us and use the chat to let us know if you hear any other issues that come up. So that's what we will look forward to. So I wanted to tell you all about our participants. We have Robin Miyamoto, who is on screen right there. And then we're also joined by Dan Chun on our little box there, and Mestisa. So we're fortunate to hear from everyone. And as we're waiting, I think another minute before we delve into everything all at once, but while we're doing that, maybe we could get up our slides of telling us a little bit more about each of our panelists. So Dan Chun, you can read all about him on our website and all his educational materials as well. But we're excited because he is the senior pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Honolulu and has been since 1994. And Dan's got a fascinating background in television, and before he became a pastor, he and his wife Pam have 3 children. They have 2 dogs, and you can read more about that. But another exciting thing they've done is they founded Hawaiian Islands Ministries in 1983, which brings together Christians for renewal and revival across Hawaii. And we'll refer more to his music video a little later on. And Dan will tell us other jokes. We'll make him tell us jokes. But, oh, this is the video. This is a Hawaii Blessing, and this is an amazing production. They got folks from all over the islands and some wonderful video footage from a drone that shows the islands when no one was on the beaches. And then they're joined by these angelic voices from across many denominations and across all the islands. And you can see by the slide, the last time we checked, it has, since May 13th, already had more than 500,000 people watching it. Mestisa is also joining us. She's the Program Director for Mental Health America of Hawaii. She's our Zoom veteran, I believe, a member of the Mental Health Task Force, the Oahu statewide and Oahu Suicide Prevention Task Force, and we welcome her to give us lots of tips on how to deal with all of this. And lastly, Robin Miyamoto, clinical psychologist. Again, you can read more of her education online. We are happy to have her because of her role in promoting training opportunities for primary care psychologists in rural and underserved communities across the state of Hawaii. Her areas of interest include many that are critical to our state: diabetes, renal disease, and cancer. She's past president of the Hawaii Psychological Association, and she's on the faculty at the University of Hawaii School of Medicine, the departments of Native Hawaiian Health, Family Medicine, and Community Health. Thank you all for joining us. Robin, could we start with you, because not only do you have an impressive career in education and in experience, as a mom, you're going through some of the moments right away that a lot of people have been dealing with over this past month. Tell us how COVID-19 has affected you and your family personally.
Yeah, so I have 2 daughters, Marley and Macy, and my older daughter, Marley, is a senior who just graduated from Mid-Pacific. And so she lost out on a lot of opportunities this year. Oh, there she is. So we were lucky enough to have a drive-by celebration for her graduation this weekend. We watched her graduation on Zoom, and we had people come by in their masks and cars to congratulate her. So we've missed out on a lot of things this year, but we found different ways to celebrate, and she's had a really good attitude about it.
That's great. What are some of the other ways that you folks dealt with that? I mean, we saw a couple of them. Tell us a little bit more about what was that like to be able to help shepherd her from a typical traditional graduation into something that was so new?
Well, I think just in terms of managing expectations and finding ways to really celebrate the moments regardless of the situation. So, having family, a small family dinner, but still social distancing, having separate food, and really managing the expectations. I think talking with her about why this is important, and I've had to talk to her about the possibility of maybe not going to her college in the fall, because they are hoping they're going to be open online, but I'm in person, but to do online and pay a huge tuition is a big commitment. So we've talked about expectations and that she may stay home for a year. I think managing those are important. But something I really recognized this weekend was it really helped to simplify things and enjoy the moment. We didn't have to worry about, oh, well, I want to get my hair done, or I want to get my nails done, and all of this extra stuff. It was really just celebrating family and celebrating her. And I think that simplifying things makes you a lot more grateful. And I was so grateful to everybody who took the time. They drove from all over the island. So I think that really says a lot.
That's great. That's really helpful about managing expectations. Moving on down the line, Dan, can you tell us a little bit about how COVID-19 started affecting you personally this time?
Wow, when COVID hit, it was horrendous. I mean, it was immediate stress and anxiety, and it was probably the most stressful time I can recall in decades. As number one, our church had to close, and we had like a 4-day notice when the governor or the mayor put us all at stay at home, and that was horrible to stop in-person worship. We had a conference that we were going to put on 4 days earlier that had 2,500 people at the Hawaii Convention Center, and it was a lot of loss of money and explaining to delegates, and do they get their money back, do they roll it over, and then vendors and all that. So, and then on the personal side, my family is, my mom is from New York, and then to know that not so much the immediate family, but distant cousins and friends, they were dying of COVID. And so it was just this hurricane, this holocaust of all these emotions, plus having to be very organized and administrative to marshal the movement at our church, or this other, through Hawaiian Islands Ministries, this other conference that just had this major earthquake in our lives. So it was very, very hard.
When did you go from full-on services to shutting down everything? Because I know you folks do a lot of outreach in addition to your weekend services. You do a lot. What was the time frame in between those two?
Well, I think it was a Thursday or Friday, actually, when the governor gave the word that we had to shut down. So we immediately went online on Sunday, but the shutdown happened that fast. And don't tell anybody, but I just picked up a Bible and gave a sermon without any prep. But that was all. We didn't have much time. We were just like, there were fires to be put out all over the place. So it was pretty immediate. But the helping the community, that took a while also to ramp up, but we got super involved in that, in trying to have food provided to those in need and help those who were immediately unemployed. And so everything was going on of trying to organize. We have about 1,500 people. And so the disappointment, the sorrow, a few people in our church had COVID. So that put me in a scare, like, did that spread? Who saw who? And so it was, as you can hear, it was like this tornado of emotions.
Wow. How about you, Mestisa? Can you tell us a little bit about you're working in the mental health field as well as being someone grappling with different issues? What was it like for you?
Yeah, so for myself, it was, I think, just a little bit of a different experience because we were watching what was happening on the international and the national level, because I work in mental health and public health and in suicide prevention. So we had our eyes very strongly focused on what was occurring, and knowing that Hawaii is just an amazing place, a beautiful place, but a place of a lot of travel, a lot of people coming in from different places. It was inevitable that it would come to our shores. And so we were trying to figure out what we needed to do to shore up what we were offering for the community, because community engagement, education, and support are so important. So here we were, like, professionally ramping up to provide as much as we could, get ahead of it as much as we could, and personally having to just sit back and assess and say, like, this is also happening to me. Like, I'm part of what's going on. How do I go ahead and plan for my own self-care, for creating balance in my life? Because I know I'm about to get really unbalanced with what I need to do for work. So, I just had to sit back and ask, like, what feeds my soul, what is my self-care, and then start doing as much of it as I could and preparing for that, so that, you know, we can give. You have to kind of invest in yourself to be able to give. So all those things were part and parcel of what we were looking at and what I personally was looking at.
Was there something that surprised you in the initial adjustment to everything? Was there anything that was surprisingly easy, whether it was us all wearing yoga pants more, or whether it was surprisingly hard, like the different way we had to relate to folks? I think that was, I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Surprisingly easy for me was self-care, because I train in it, I do it for myself, and I, you know, had already had some of that in place. So gardening more, reading more, reaching out and staying connected to my friends. I think the hard part and really surprising part for me, I think if you'd asked me like pre-quarantine if I was an extrovert, I would have said like a little bit, and then after being in quarantine, I now say a lot. I am a huge extrovert, didn't know that. I really needed a lot more connection, so I had to get really creative about how I went about that, because looking at it, physical isolation isn't social disconnection, and I had to get really smart about staying connected to my support system. So I was surprised that yes, I'm an extrovert.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you all for that first round. Before we go any further, I would like to explain a little bit more about the organizations who are our sponsors, and we'll start with yours then. Mental Health America of Hawaii, for 75 years, has fulfilled its mission to promote mental health, mental wellness through education, advocacy, and service that reduces stigma and improves the overall care and empowerment of those impacted by mental illness. And Kamehameha Schools is also our sponsor, and it was, as we know, founded in 1887 by the legacy of Princess Bernice Pauahi Bishop. Kamehameha Schools is a private educational charitable trust committed to improving capability and well-being of the Native Hawaiian people through education. KS envisions in one generation a thriving Lahui where learners grounded in Christian and Hawaiian values achieve post-secondary educational success and become leaders who contribute to their communities both locally and globally. And Nami Hawaii, who has been such a wonderful help to partner with us. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental health conditions. NAMI Hawaii is dedicated to improving the quality of life for individuals and families affected by mental health conditions through support, education, advocacy, and awareness. NAMI Hawaii serves the community by empowering people. And we have a video that tells us a little bit.
NAMI gives me hope because when my son was struggling with severe depression and suicidal ideation, I took the family to family class, and it taught me skills to be a better mother, to be a better communicator, taught me about resources, and I eventually got my son help. Now he's giving back and helping people in the mental health community, and it also helped empower me as an individual with my own personal journey of mental wellness. And now I am learning how to deal with my own stress, my own depression and anxiety, and I find that I am healthier than ever because I have a great support system. I stay connected to the support group, and I continue to learn so much from all the people in this NAMI community. So I'm very hopeful for our recovery and staying mentally well.
Well, thank you for that video. We were, again, it is a new world, so we had some syncing issues with that. So I know we all heard the message, but we apologize if the voice and the lips didn't always match right there. Let's move right into our questions. And I think one of the main things we're all asking is what coping skills can help with these strong feelings of missing out on these moments? We're stressed, we're frustrated, we're anxious. Mestisa, why don't you start?
Absolutely. So I think that some of the things that can be helpful, like the basic coping skills, is just to start off with like validating how you're feeling. It's really important to know that this is a new situation. Many of us weren't prepared going into the situation. We were going in with as many coping skills and self-care pieces that we had beforehand because it happened very quickly, like Dan said. So just recognizing that, validate how you're feeling. It can go very quickly from the morning to the afternoon feeling very differently, or it can go very slowly where for a week or two you're in a really relatively great mood, and then it goes down and you're just struggling, feeling irritable or feeling upset. And those are all very normal responses to what's happening right now. And it's, you know, very easy for us to kind of get into a place of feeling like we should be productive. We have all this time, and that's just not realistic. We're feeling a lot more stress and anxiety. So, you know, my biggest thing is validate how you're feeling, reach out to your support systems and use the skills you have. And if you don't have enough coping skills and you're feeling like you're struggling, you know, reach out to those support systems again, reach out, because there is help available, whether it's through telehealth services or with mentors or faith leaders. You know, so many people are very active and engaged in helping people right now.
I think one of the things that sometimes holds people back is that thinking that maybe they're the only ones feeling exactly the way they are. And I think what had helped some people we talked with was to think that part of what we're doing is not just connecting for our own self, but also checking in with people.
Absolutely. So, you know, check in with your family members and loved ones who are essential workers, check in with those who are vulnerable in your community, whether it is our kapuna or people who are caregivers to people at home. You know, there's so many people that, you know, are looking to connect. And I know that we say, you know, you have to physically distance, so you can do that through text or through video messaging. But what we know is when we give back, when we reach out, it also fills ourselves as much as it fills someone else. So that's why it's so important to do.
Dan, can you tell us about what you folks did when like you said, you have a lot of people who you need to reach out to through your ministry regularly. What did you do when you realized that you weren't going to see people in person?
Well, first of all, which was a mighty task, is we decided we would call every single member in our church and just give that personal touch, because we knew we were going into high tech in this season, but we wanted also to be high touch. And so to call every single person and say, are you okay? Are you healthy? How are you feeling? And how are you doing emotionally? So physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that was really helpful. And second, just to assure them that whatever they're feeling, don't compare. This is not a cookie cutter time where you're comparing, gee, I should feel like this, I should be stronger, or how come I don't feel other things? And that it's okay. Whatever everybody has a different timeline. And of course, all of the issues they had coming into it were still there and might be magnified. So if they were already grieving the loss of a spouse, wow, is that magnified? If they're grieving a divorce, wow, is that magnified? And so it was that personal touch of phone calling. And then we did eventually do online grief share, online divorce care. And so people could be connected to help at least those people going through that kind of season to get through that time.
That's great. Robin, you were able to send us along some other helping graphics that talked about how to deal with things, how to help classify things into sort of an urgent or important. Can you tell us a little bit about those, and we'll pull that slide up as well.
Sorry. So this is actually something called the Eisenhower Matrix that was developed by President Eisenhower. And it's actually really useful, and I use it a lot when I'm talking with people about trying to figure out how we're spending our time. And ideally, we want to spend as much of our time in that blue square, in the important and urgent things, you know, work that needs to be done, bills that need to be paid, self-care, preventive care. And we want to try to stay out of that, that bottom piece. I'm sorry. We don't want to spend too much time in the urgent, more in the green box. So not urgent, but important. But the urgent and important are the things that add stress, right? So the things that we're leaving till the last minute, we want to try to minimize that part. Then, of course, there's the not important and urgent. And that's really something someone else has given us, right? Somebody has given that to you and they're like, well, I need this by tomorrow, but it's not really important to you. And we want to try to avoid those, try to delegate them. But there's kind of a famous saying, you know, a lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. And then that last box, the red one, is where we want to try to minimize our time. Of course, it's important sometimes to escape a little bit, but we don't want to go down that rabbit hole into too much time on the internet, too many escape activities, video games, social media, because that can really be a time suck. And then that pushes you to have a lot more urgent issues that you don't have the time to deal with.
Could you also talk a bit about the things we can control and things we can't control? Because that certainly was something that all of you folks have brought up in our planning. And so maybe you could start, Robin, and then we can move on and everybody can chat about that.
Sure. I think, this pandemic is really something that we've never faced before. We've never been in such uncertain times. And it's something that's been really difficult for everybody I don't remember a time where you couldn't go somewhere because it was not allowed. It wasn't open, right? And I think, unfortunately, as Americans, we have a hard time with that, right? Like we feel like we have a right to do everything. But I think that also increases people's fear and anxiety and depression. So that while there are a lot of things that we can't control, we don't know what the numbers are going to do. As an individual person, we don't have control over tourism or different issues. There are a lot of things that we can control. And if we put our energy into that, then we start to feel like we have a little bit more control over our lives. And these are things like keeping a schedule, right? So still waking up in the morning, changing your clothes, even if it's from the pajamas to the yoga pants and the sweater, having a schedule, maybe watch a little bit of TV, catch up on the news, but don't dwell with it all day. Have time set aside for work, healthy eating. Exercise is a huge part of that. And as we've seen the beaches start to open up and the parks start to open up, it's important to be getting outside and moving your body. And then the things that we can do that can keep us safe. So washing our hands, wearing a mask. Those are things that put layers of protection between us and the virus.
What about you, Dan? What are some of the other things that you've helped people with on this?
Well, one of the things we always ask people is, do you need to get help or can you give help? And it was either Robin or maybe it was Mestisa who mentioned that the service part is actually quite therapeutic, that it's not just about me, and that there are others who are either in the same boat who could need support, or people who are not as well off. And I think during this time, what's so important is that it gives us an opportunity to kind of rinse through our minds and our souls of what really is our right. And I think Robin said that, what do we think we have a birthright to? Like I have a birthright to see Taylor Swift come into the arena and give me a concert, or I have a birthright to watch football or basketball or baseball on every day. And really to replace that with gratitude, that there are a lot we can be thankful for being in this country, but really what do we need for mental health and what really does count? And I'm hoping as we come out of this and people are going back to the restaurants or back to whatever, that there are probably going to be some people who are going to double down, and I'm going to go to more restaurants and I want to have more entertainment. I'm going to, binge more. Or there may be people during this time is, you know what, my priorities have changed and I find this is more important now and not what I thought was important. Or maybe those things I was a little addicted to and this is more important and I got to do that. And so that plus the whole thinking of how can I help people and maybe serve people, as opposed to it's all about me, baby. And so this is a great opportunity for wonderful increasing mental health and getting stronger. Or we could ignore what's happening and just think about ourselves, and then it won't be as great.
For sure. And that leads us to another question we wanted to ask, which is what warning signs should we be looking for in ourselves and others?
Is that to me?
Sure, you can start there. I think you headed down that path. You can go sunny or you can go dark. So tell us a little dark and then we'll go to the others.
And lead to my colleagues. But I just think the whole aspect of be careful of too much isolation, and that we're just wanting to be by ourselves and not talk to each other. And especially if we're dealing with some tough emotions like anger and how, not all anger is bad, but I mean, how do we manage that? And how do we, disappointment and grieving because of things we don't have. And I think when we're isolated, there's less of a chance to get other perspectives on it, because there's so many different facets to all of those issues. We need other people to talk to us because we all have blind spots. And more eyes, clearer vision, I would say. And so that's a thought.
Mestisa, if you could talk a little bit about what you mentioned before. Are there times when we're all going to go through various stages? There are different stages of grief for this, but if you could talk with us a little bit about those warning signs and how it might be okay to go gardening a lot and dive into baking, but then again, there you got to surface, or what are some of the balance things, or what are the warning signs?
Absolutely. So, when we're talking about the importance of balance, what we're talking about is kind of fueling your self-care. And I think that Robin really highlighted it, which is distraction is good, but distraction can also be a negative experience where you're not really processing how you feel. You're not really saying, I feel sad today, but you're just kind of watching Netflix for 8 hours and not wanting to think about it. I think that it plays a role, and that it's an important role, because we can't sit in our emotions, especially when they're really heavy, for too long, but never to sit in them and to stay doing those things doesn't create a balance that we need to have. And so the warning signs we're really looking for, like Dan said, absolutely socially withdrawing and not connecting with people, seeing a really pervasive change in mood, whether that's depression or irritability, because things can look different for different people, especially teenagers. Teenagers can oftentimes be more irritable than sad, but it's just the opposite side of the coin. Looking at that and looking at the time frame. So experiencing that for a day or two is kind of normal for this situation, but experience it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and seeing that it's impacting relationships, your ability to function in school, or your ability to function in work. Like, that's really big flags that say, I need to look at this and possibly seek help for it. And having thoughts that make you feel hopeless, or even thoughts that are very clearly, suicidality in nature, thinking, I don't want to wake up tomorrow, or I'm thinking about killing myself. If those are some of the struggles that you're having, please reach out. The resources are still available with the National Suicide Hotline and our crisis line. So if those people in your life may be saying those things or exhibiting those things, you can ask. It's very important just to ask the question, not to soften it, to say, like, are you thinking about hurting yourself, but to really just ask clearly, are you having thoughts of suicide, so that and asking them doesn't put the question into your mind. I think that we're seeing a lot of people talking now more about what the mental health response is going to be, what the crisis is going to be to what we've been going through, but to also know it sits with us individually as well. So as individuals, making sure that we do what we need to for self-care, that we're evaluating how we're doing, and we're looking around in our communities and families and making sure that they're doing okay too, because there are resources available if you need them.
Robin, could you also talk a little bit about what I've heard from people who say we're feeling lucky and fortunate because we're feeling okay. We have some financial loss to our family, but we're able to basically pay our bills. Nobody close to us has become critically ill. So we feel a little like we're whining if we say something now. But can you share with us, like, how to help deal with all that?
Well, and I think Dan touched on it when he was saying not to compare. There's always going to be somebody better off than you, and there's always going to be somebody worse off than you, but that doesn't negate your actual experience. And I think allowing yourself to have the emotions and to grieve what you have lost, whether it's moments or money or connection to people, being able to grieve that and then trying to find ways to reconnect. But I think probably one of the least helpful emotions is guilt, and it doesn't help us. It doesn't make us better people. In fact, it makes us want to dive into the Haagen-Dazs in the freezer. So trying to avoid the guilt and really just experience those emotions, but then flipping it over and looking at the gratitude part of things, not in a toxic positivity way of like, well, we should just all be happy and minimize things, but to really look at what are the positive things in your life and how can you highlight them, whether it's reaching out to somebody and saying, thank you so much for this, or, really appreciating and sitting with your family. I think that sort of gratitude can really help you flip things over when you start to feel like you're having a hard time. I just want to highlight, pretty much all psychologists, some psychiatrists, counselors have switched to telehealth. So if somebody's feeling like they need to reach out, it doesn't mean that you have to go into an office. If you're concerned about that, you can reach out. And there's very easy platforms like Zoom or Doxy.me that people are utilizing. and people have availability in their schedule. So you can look at Mental Health America's page, hawaiipsychology.org is the Hawaii Psychological Association, and there's a page there called Find a Psychologist. If you've lost your job and your health insurance, we also have a pro bono project where we have some psychologists and mental health counselors who are willing to take patients without insurance during this time. So there are a lot of resources, and I think finding the strengths, and it really does take a strong person to reach out and ask for help if you need it. As Mestisa was saying, if it's starting to go on for weeks, then that's really something that you need to talk to someone about.
Great. We're going to go on to our next question, which is, all of this is related, and I wanted to let people know that we will be doing questions through the Q&A button later on, and we're going to go through a few of the questions that we know have been somewhat universal. So our next question is, how do we balance when it's right to tough it out or take it easy? And I wanted to drop back to Robin on that, in that, Robin, you also sent us a slide about a daily checklist. And I thought that was, that it will be helpful for a bunch of people in our audience to take a look at that, because some of it were questions that I know as not a mental health professional, I would be interested in looking at it. And I'm especially the order. So tell us about how you came up with this.
Well, so this isn't my slide. I found this one. But I think, there's been a lot that folks have tried to come up with during this time. And although COVID has taken a lot from us, it's also been an incredible time of innovation in terms of technology, but also I think in, online mental health sources. And so these are some questions to ask yourself every day to help you to feel better. So number one, what am I grateful for today? And again, like I was saying, not in that toxic positivity way, but really thinking about what are the great things that you have in your life that you can focus on. Number two, and this relates to what Mestisa and Dan were talking about in terms of the giving portion, is who am I checking in on, or who am I connecting with today? Especially, some of the populations we want to highlight is anyone in your life that who may be a victim of interpersonal violence, kids, maybe that may be in unsafe households, really checking in, connecting with people to make sure that they're doing okay. The third one is, what expectations of normal am I letting go of? And, I had shared with the panel before, I think a really good way of thinking about this is, there were some recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics to be thinking about discipline for your children right now as if they were sick. So when your kids are homesick, they're not feeling well, they're a little more clingy or naggy or irritable, and we give them some wiggle room, and we don't hold them to as high a standard in terms of behavior. And I think that's really important now, because they're going through a lot. They've lost a lot. They don't necessarily understand things. But I also think it applies to us as adults. If we think about giving ourselves a break, letting us, if we need a nap in the middle of the day, take a nap. Because there's so much that's going on, but letting go of those expectations of normal, and that life looks different right now. Again, how am I getting outside today? So the exercise, or just feeling the sun on your skin and feeling the wind, can really change your mood very quickly. How am I moving my body, whether it's, outside walking or at the beach, or maybe you're doing some YouTube exercise videos. And then lastly, what beauty am I creating, cultivating, or inviting today? And this is really that creative aspect, as long as it builds joy in you and doesn't create frustration. So if it's baking, if it's home improvement projects, sewing masks, drawing pictures and sending it to, the less tech savvy family members that you have, because that can really brighten their day. And we're going back to, snail mail and drawings that you get in the mail. That's a really nice surprise to somebody. So I think these are great ways to kind of check in with yourself every day and be able to maintain this behavior during the pandemic.
Yeah, thank you. Those are great. And I think that, Dan, you also had a good story in when we chatted earlier about supporting one another as we're trying to heal, as we try to figure this out. Tell us your experience about your friend who reached out to you.
You know, I'm not sure which story I shared with you on that one.
I mean the one about your friend who made you something to
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Got it. But first of all, I just want to say, golly, Robin, those daily quarantine questions, woohoo! That was like worth the price of admission, and those phenomenal. I'm going to pass that all around to my friends. Yeah. So when we think about how do we can really support people, I have a friend who is. Unfortunately, she has a very debilitating disease and super painful. She says on a scale of 1 to 10, her doctor says you're probably at a 13 and you have to live with that. And so she said, how can I support people? You know, what can I do? I'm lying in bed, I'm full of pain. And I know I can't just think of myself, and I want to help the community. And then she thought, you know what? I know Pastor Dad loves the TV show The Mandalorian, in which there's a little creature who looks a lot like Yoda, who could be a baby Yoda. And why don't I make him a clay object? I'm pretty good with my hands. And so, let me pick this up. It's here on my desk. She made me this baby Yoda. Here we go, really close, zooming in on Zoom. And she was lying in bed and spent hours just creating this. And she had the tools to make the creases, and she got the right paint, the right Pantone number and everything. And I was just so impressed. And then she mailed this to me and said, Dan, this is the way I just want to support you. And I can't do much. I can't lift bags of groceries for the food bank or the food pantry. But I want to do this to support you. And I think it's a great symbol for us all of, there are ways we can help one another. But this was her baby Yoda way. And I was so touched that I keep this on my desk now as really a symbol of her courage and boldness, and how we can always think of others in the midst of our own incredible emotional and physical pain.
Wow, that's such a great story. Thank you for sharing with us and for showing us actually too. Mestisa, can you talk a little bit more about that, supporting one another when everyone's trying to heal and figuring this out as we go along? Not all of us had the checklist that Robin cleverly stole early on, but now we can all steal it back as well. So,
absolutely. So I think it's important to kind of first honor the fact that we are extraordinarily lucky and privileged to live in Hawaii, because we are such a collectivistic, such a community-based place to live. And I've seen different reactions and different struggles in other places in our nation. And I'm very, very blessed to count myself as someone who gets to experience how Hawaii is really coming together, talking about spreading aloha and how to support one another. You see so many amazing stories of people helping each other out. And so focusing on that kind of stuff that you see and sharing it, like the focus on the helpers, share what you're seeing, share the resources, but also just recognizing that we're all going through this together. It's like one of the first times historically in a long time where you're going to call and talk to someone who may be a provider, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, but they're in it with you. They're going through the same thing. And while that can be very daunting for the provider in some ways, because they need to work on their self-care, make sure they have those things in line, which we're all doing, but it also means that they deeply empathize and are having a greater understanding of what we're all going through. I was in a webinar yesterday with Dr. Manilani Meyer, who was teaching us about Ho'opono, and she said this amazing thing, which is love is found by loving. And so I thought that's just a wonderful way to kind of phrase what we need to do, which is reach out, connect, and share the aloha, share the love, and do that with whatever ways that you can. So if that's through art, is that through gardening, is that through, because you're just very tech savvy, because we need those people right now. There's just so many different kinds of gifts that people have. So recognizing what's your gift and how are you going to share that, and doing that in a really safe and a really loving way is crucial. And I think that we're all starting to figure that out, because we need to, and we need to be able to do those things for each other. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like you need to take a break, that's also part of giving, is giving to yourself and taking that rest and taking those breaks.
What do you folks feel as we're starting to get into this reopening? Do you think, what do you think of the variety of reactions we're going to feel to that? I think we're not going to all be unanimous about what we think about the first opportunity to open something up.
You know, well, I think I think speaking from my own personal experience, but I think, you know, this is something I anticipate talking to a lot of folks about, is what is true anxiety about our susceptibility to the virus, and what do we need to do to protect ourselves? And then what is more about inconvenience, right? So I know that when I start to see people in the office again, you know, or when my kids go back to school, it means earlier mornings, it means a commute, it means putting regular pants on, it means I can't just walk to the refrigerator anytime I want. And I can feel myself resisting that a little bit. You know, I had a meeting out of the house the other day, and I was like, God, I'm really mad that I have to put regular clothes on. And I think that's going to be something that we see. I think, you know, I'm able to have more time to cook dinner because I don't have a commute back and forth. And so I think there's going to be some adjustment issues versus true anxiety as things open up. I think, you know, hopefully we can be really careful about this. And, you know, what I'm suggesting to my patients who are that have chronic diseases, that have, they are immunocompromised, is waiting a little while until we open up. You know, we're opening up restaurants, we're opening up salons tomorrow. But for them, maybe give it 2 weeks or a month. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with the cases. But I really don't want them to rush out and be exposed to something. So I think it's going to be phases for everybody. And I think there's going to be people who are super happy and, you know, head out there and maybe be a little too gung-ho about it. And I think there's also going to be people who need to hang back and be careful. And I think it's going to create some anxiety for the people who really enjoy staying at home and have found that this little bubble that they're in has been more comfortable. And so everybody's gonna be adjusting to that new normal. And I think, you know, it's gonna cause some ups and downs in people's mood as well.
Thanks. I think that's really helpful for all of us. I know it is for me. Let's move now to our audience questions. And one of the ones anyone who wants to send in questions, please use the Q&A button. That will be most helpful for us. And one of the questions we got has to do with high school graduates. Some of them are, we're hearing some of them are disappointed in not having a regular celebration. And so they just don't want to do anything. Should we assume that they're going to keep feeling this way, and go ahead and plan something special, or should we move on? That's kind of a, you know, difficult one.
Well, you know, having, you know, from personal experience, I think as a parent, I was really sad that my daughter wasn't going to have the ceremony. And I thought, you know, it feels anticlimactic, right? This Zoom celebration, it doesn't seem like it really marks the occasion. But I would go ahead and put something together. I think it's really important to have this sense of occasion. And they may not know what they want. And the fact that they don't feel like celebrating, I think if other people celebrate them, it could really lift their mood. And it's an opportunity you're not going to get back. Once this moment is past, you know, it's not like November, you're going to be like, oh, now let's have a graduation celebration. You know, so, I mean, maybe we'll have the parties later, but the drive-by graduations, signs, lays, you know, whatever the case is, I think for my own daughter, she actually liked a drive-by ceremony better because she wasn't lost in a huge crowd of people. I think more people came to see her than would have seen her had it been at her school. And she also acknowledges, she's like, Mom, I think I got some pity money. Like people, you know, because we do feel bad for our graduates. And she acknowledged that, and she was really grateful for that. But I would go ahead and do something to celebrate them because, you know, sometimes people need a little bit of help getting into a happy place. And if you can help them with that, I think it's important. Yeah,
sometimes I think we all do need that nudge. And once we're out there, then we're better. I know with our kids, right, it's easier to tell them, it's not just for you, it's for the other people too. So, sorry, that's the mom in me coming out. Let's go to another question from our audience. They want to know what you folks are feeling about meditating to deal with stress and mental health.
Absolutely. So it's okay, I'll jump in. So I think meditation is so crucial. The reason that I love it is because it also talks about being very present focused. We can't change the past, and the future is very uncertain right now. And so just looking at today as the moment that you can make change really helps people stay focused, helps get through the day to day. Meditation also helps. I mean, we know that it improves well-being, it improves physical health, sleep. That's one of the biggest things that anxiety can disrupt. Meditation helps with that. Here at Mental Health America of Hawaii, we've been talking about making June, the theme of June, mindfulness, because it is so crucial. And June is also PTSD Awareness Month. And we use meditation very frequently with people who have that diagnosis and are struggling with, you know, trauma and anxiety, because it is so great for so many different things. So if it's something that you haven't tried before, meditation can be, I think, a little bit challenging for beginners. It was for myself. I think my first time I did it for 5 minutes and thought, you know, for 3 minutes, I thought about how my nose was itching. So, you know, it can be a little challenging. So I always recommend, like, start small, and it doesn't have to look the same way. So meditation can be done sitting, lying, walking, just taking deep breaths with your eyes open. It can be done in many different ways, listening to music, listening to nature. So find what works for you and absolutely use it. I think it's a wonderful tool and a wonderful piece of coping that you can add to your regimen.
Yeah, I think meditation's a great thing, and I realize not all of our viewers are maybe religious, but there's tons of research that prayer really helps people in their mental health, and so I would just throw that into the hopper too, in addition to meditation, that people talking to a personal God who cares about them really helps people during a time like this.
There are a number of free apps. So there's Headspace is available, Calm, Buddhify. There's a lot of meditation on YouTube. And I think it's a really great way to just reset. I know there was somebody that had put a question in the question box about what happens when your house starts to feel really small, because you need to get away from people. And it's great to be able to just take those 5 or 10 minutes. And I personally use Headspace, and there's a beginner version that kind of walks you through meditation, but it just helps you to pause, calm your body down. It can lower your blood pressure, definitely lowers your respiration rate, just relaxes everything. And then you can go back to what you were doing. But I think when we're at home and, you know, you're trying to work from home, and maybe you've got kids or dogs or whatever the case is, or you're seeing the same faces over and over again, and you're starting to need a break from your family, meditation can really just give you that pause to be able to calm things down and go back to what you were doing.
Definitely, and I'm happy to hear you all say it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be experts at it at the front of it. Sometimes it's just taking a deep breath. I know there's things that seem very normal now, but then it's stressful. If something changes at the last minute, I notice sometimes in my own life, I have a harder time dealing with, well, what do you mean? We've already changed that 3 times. Why are we changing this again at the last minute? But then the deep breath and how would I like someone else to respond to this? Sometimes that's taking 3 deep breaths and just thinking about it. Can you folks help offer our audience some thoughts on, many of us are dealing with some financial anxieties, and how to help with that? I mean, that's definitely 1 out of 4 in our community is unemployed. Are there good tips for, I know you're more on the mental health side, and I know you folks already addressed it somewhat with the things you can control and things you can't control. So maybe you could add a little bit there on the financial side of this.
You know, I think there are so many helpers out there. As Mestisa was saying, I'm so proud of our community for people coming together at this point. And so there's, you know, tons of food banks, food pantries, meal services. I think the hard part, and I've seen this with some of the patients in our clinic, even before this, having to utilize services like this, is there's a sense of shame. And there really doesn't need to be, because we're all in this situation together. This is not something that you brought on yourself. It's something that has happened to all of us. And I think the fact that the services are out there and trying to avail yourself of them, don't hesitate, don't feel that guilt, don't feel that shame. And definitely, if there's something else that you need, reach out to somebody, whether it's a family member or a church member. A lot of times, when we're all in our head, we don't necessarily think about it. And I would definitely want one of my friends to say, hey, you know what, I'm having a hard time. And so reach out to people. But I think we have to get past that hila. We have to get past that shame, and just recognize that we're all in the same boat right now.
Yeah, and that's a high hurdle to get over, that shame. I agree with you, Robin. And yet we know the healthy people ask for help. And so don't feel like there must be something wrong with you to ask help. It's a good thing that you're asking for help. And if you are in a faith community, I know in our church we have a fund to help people. Maybe it's with a gas bill, maybe it's a month's rent. But unless you tell your pastor or whoever your leader is, or tell your small group, they won't know. And so, and like at our church, we even have financial planners who could help. Like, okay, how do you adjust the family budget now? So there's probably a lot of aid out there, in the community, in your church, but you do have to like raise your hand and say, gee, can somebody help me? And no shame to do that.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of people looking for different assistance with finances. You can absolutely call our office. It's the 521-1846 for Oahu and the 242-6461 for Maui County, or go to our website, which I think will be linked at the end. We have COVID-specific 19 resources that are available. If you call us, we'll help connect you to what you're looking for, or you can find those directly. But you can also, you know, if you're looking for really something specific and you haven't found it quite yet, you can Google COVID-19 resources for Hawaii. There's so many different people in the state who are providing those, including ourselves. I've seen them through Candy, through a lot of different organizations who are just trying to get as much information out as possible. And there's also really cool things happening on social media. Recently, I saw on Facebook a group that was basically like a give and a take, like, I have this to give. Does anyone need this? And so there's so many amazing places that you can just put out, hey, I have a neighbor who is looking for this specifically. Does anyone have it? And 5 people say yes, it'll be on my curb. You can pick it up after 3 on Monday. So just realize that, you know, we're all in it together. So we should all give what we can give. And if you need, take what you need to take, because that's how we're going to move through this, and how actually we're going to demonstrate to other people in other places in our country how it can be done.
Well, I'll keep you here for a moment then, Mestisa, because our next question is, how can I help a family member who's struggling with mental health, but they don't think they need some help?
I think that's probably one of the number one questions we get at any point in time. And part of it is to understand it's somewhat about insight and starting those conversations with someone. So if you're talking to them and you're thinking like, I feel like they need help, but they don't feel like they need it, it's really about helping them see what's happening and asking questions like, so you think everything is going well. Is there anything that you think isn't going well? Is there anything that's being disrupted by what's happening right now and how you're feeling right now? Just to help start to highlight what may be a challenge, or just owning and say, look, you know, I'm concerned because I'm seeing this, so help me understand what I'm seeing. And that way you're owning your perspective and being open to hearing what their experience is, because maybe it is something different than you think it is. So really being, you know, a great listener, non-judgmental, and starting those conversations by owning your own perspective of what it is and being open to hearing theirs will help shift them if they really do need the help. And then sometimes just saying, like, if you need me, call me, reach back out to me, let me know. You know, I know some people that you could talk to when you're ready, so that they know that you're the ear to go to and you're the person who's open.
Robin, would you, or Dan, would either of you tackle a question we got from our viewers about home life balance? This person said, I'm having a hard time seeing work that needs to be done and leaving it alone. I definitely see that. It's easy to fall in. For me, I can work a 12-hour day and I don't notice, and suddenly I am. So I think a lot of people are struggling with that. How do we deal with boundaries, and how do we do this better?
Well, I think, you know, that's a huge one. We've gotten really good at working from home. We've brought home all of our equipment. And I think there's that sense that things need to continue to get done. So if you have the ability to create physical boundaries in your house where, you know, your work happens in one room and it stays in that room, and if not, really creating some timelines that help you keep those boundaries, you know, so that to create those work hours, and try to limit it, because we need sleep, we need exercise, we need family time. And if all we're doing is working, that burnout issue is going to be high. And there's also going to be a lot of resentment going back to work, because you will feel like you've given so much of yourself and your employer hasn't been appreciative of that. So I think creating those realistic expectations. I know for some people who are parents that they've been trying to manage school and just managing kids in general, you can't necessarily keep those 8 to 5 hours because you're having to work in between. I think a really good thing is to have a to-do list, and you want to have 3 big tasks on that to-do list. Like today, I'm going to get these 3 things done. And when they're done, I'm closing the computer or I'm stopping the phone call, so that you have that sense of accomplishment, but you also don't feel like you have to tackle the big, long month to-do list just because your computer is sitting there. But for parents that are having a hard time juggling the hours, having those tasks can really be helpful.
That's great. Wow, the time has really gone by so swiftly. What I'd like to do is ask each of you to tell us a takeaway, one thing that as we're walking out the door today that you'd like to make sure, like it's our mythical door in many of our cases, but as we're leaving, what one thing you'd like to share, and you can draw it from some of the questions we're getting, or you can draw it from something that is important to you, or anything that you think. And again, let me assure everyone who's in the seminar, we will send out resources, but this is just, yeah, please let us know. What's one takeaway you have?
I think for me, on an earlier question you'd asked, do we tough it out, or do we kind of take it easy on ourselves? I think the answer is both and. For all the reasons we've already mentioned, we've got to take it easy. But there is a part that I think we have to tough it out. And you know, Tom Brokaw wrote that book, The Greatest Generation, and that generation had to go through World War II. We haven't had something like like this since 9/11. But we can either rise to the occasion or let this occasion squash us. And we have a chance to be a greatest generation, to say, look, we pulled together, we helped the community, we reached out, we confessed that we needed help. And the World War II, you know, my family was, our house is still the same property of World War II. And my parents put sandbags in front of the garage door. They blacked out the windows because of war. They suffered through 5 years, not 2 months, 5 years, and rationing and everything, and also sorts of racism and everything. And so this is our time to rise to the occasion, show courage and boldness, and hard times, but if we help each other out, we're going to get through this.
I think for me, you know, reflecting on this question, I think there's a lot of power in being able to appreciate what you have instead of focusing on what you've lost. When you can take that step back and look at the great things, and I'm not talking about financial things, but, you know, even if you're struggling during this time, if you think about, wow, but my neighbors have helped me out, my friends and family have helped me out, really trying to do that figure ground switch and focus on what you've learned about yourself, what you've learned about your network and your life during this time, instead of focusing on the things that we've lost.
And just maybe to add to those wonderful sentiments, which I will be taking with me for the rest of the day, is this idea of embracing hope. I think in all situations, if we can be hopeful, to look to the things that are going well, to the little quiet things in our lives that we're really appreciating and you know, walking into with gratitude. And then we share that in different ways, and how we show love and how we show aloha. I think that we will be in a really good place. Hope is crucial to everything that we go through in life, and being able to show that and share that is really important.
Thank you all. You've given so many great ideas and so many things that I'm personally planning to steal and share. And we want to thank you, of course, and we want to thank our sponsors, because we were able to do this with the help of Nami Hawaii, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Mental Health America of Hawaii, and Kamehameha Schools. And we also want you to know that we have more resources available, and we will be sending them out to you. And we also have more of our webinar coming up. Next week, we have youth. After that, there's sports, couples, and home. And that's us just getting started. So we welcome feedback about this. And we really want you to take advantage of the many resources. They're the ones here. This presentation will be available on our website at honolulumagazine.com. We'll also be on our social media. But we also, if we could just take a quick look at our resources before we say goodbye, some of the things that we have there, everyone has shared with us, and we have just what I think was, I was excited to see when I looked through the resources that everyone sent, were not only the websites and a few tips, but like you all came to independently without any prompting, we all came to the last line. We're in this together, so let's spread aloha and let's help one another in a way that just makes sense to us. I mean, nobody really has to tell us to do that. I think we just have to say, yeah, we're on the right track. And I just thank you all so much, and I thank our audience for taking part. And we look forward to getting together again and helping to share resources, because that's what it's all about. So thank you all, and with that, we'll say good afternoon, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.